I turned down a higher-paying job across the state just to stay close to her. But she spent her overtime hours in the break room with a man who still borrowed gas money from his friends. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments, which country are you watching from? My name is Jason Reed, and I am 32 years old. I believe that real love was built on effort. I worked long hours at the warehouse, sometimes 14-hour shifts, just so Amber could focus on her office job without worrying about bills. Every time she said, "I'll be working late," I felt proud instead of suspicious. I used to bring her dinner, burgers, coffee, sometimes her favorite pasta, and wait outside her building like a fool who thought loyalty meant love. Amber always smiled when she saw me waiting. "You didn't have to," she'd say, tucking her hair behind her ear, her voice soft and sweet. I'd laugh and tell her, "That's what boyfriends do." I didn't see the distance forming behind her eyes, the hesitation when I asked about her day. I thought the stress of work was wearing her down. I told myself I just needed to support her more. Her friends often said I was too good to be true, too patient, too loyal. But that's what love looked like to me. Sacrifice without keeping score. She talked about her dreams of moving up at work, maybe one day managing her own department. I told her I'd stand beside her, no matter what it took. And I meant it. But love isn't a one-way road. I didn't realize I was driving alone while she was already taking detours behind my back. The late nights became more frequent, the excuses more polished. "I'm covering for a coworker," she'd say. "My boss needs me on short notice." She always sounded calm, practiced, believable. Still, something about her tone started to change. The warmth I used to hear in her voice began fading into routine. Her laughter, once effortless, now felt forced. When I reached out to hold her hand, she'd pull away, saying she was tired. I thought maybe we were both just exhausted from working so much. I never considered that she might be investing her time somewhere else entirely. One night she came home after midnight, her hair slightly messy, perfume different from usual. "You look beautiful," I said, half asleep on the couch. She smiled weakly. "You always say that," she whispered, before walking straight to the shower. I remember watching her through the open door, wondering why that sentence sounded less like gratitude and more like guilt. At the time, I told myself not to think too much about it. I had no reason to doubt her, or so I thought. When you love someone deeply, your mind becomes your worst enemy. You explain away the lies because the truth would destroy you. But that night, something inside me shifted quietly. I couldn't name it yet, but it was the first crack in the picture-perfect version of love I thought we had. It started small, so small that I almost convinced myself nothing was wrong. Amber began checking her phone constantly, laughing at messages I couldn't see and turning the screen face down whenever I walked by. She said it was just work stuff, and I believed her because that's what I always did. Trust wasn't just part of our relationship. It was the only thing holding it together. But slowly, her energy changed. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped cooking on weekends, something she used to love doing. When we watched movies together, she'd keep scrolling through her phone, half listening to my words, nodding at the right times, but not really there. I started feeling like a guest in my own relationship, living with a stranger who wore my girlfriend's face. One night, I reached for her hand while we were on the couch. She pulled away, pretending to grab her phone. I noticed her fingers shaking slightly. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled and said, "I'm just tired, Jason." But her smile didn't reach her eyes. It looked like something practiced, something mechanical. That moment stuck with me longer than I wanted to admit. The next few weeks only made things worse. She started dressing differently, more makeup, new perfume, and clothes I'd never seen before. She said she was trying to look more professional at work. I wanted to be supportive, but something about it felt off. She'd leave home looking like she was going to a dinner party, not the office. When I joked about it, she laughed nervously, kissed my cheek, and said, "You worry too much." Her phone habits got even stranger. She changed her passcode, claiming her company required it for privacy. She began stepping outside for phone calls instead of answering near me. One night, I heard her whispering in the kitchen. When she came back, she looked startled to see me awake. "Just a coworker asking about tomorrow's shift," she said quickly. I didn't press her, but deep down, I already knew that voice on the phone wasn't about overtime. Then there were the overtime hours. They started once or twice a week, then almost every night. "We're short-staffed," she said. "Everyone's pitching in." I wanted to believe her because the alternative was too painful to imagine. But when someone's lying to you, their eyes tell a different story. Hers were distant, distracted, almost guilty. One night, she forgot her lunch at home. I decided to surprise her, thinking it might bring us closer again. I drove to her office around 8. The building was dark. Only the security lights were on, and her car wasn't in the parking lot. I sat there for 10 minutes trying to understand what that meant. She came home 2 hours later, claiming she had just finished a long shift. I didn't tell her where I'd been. I didn't have the courage to admit what I was starting to suspect. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing something terrible. Love doesn't disappear overnight. It fades, lie by lie, until you're the only one still trying to keep it alive. The following week, Amber's schedule shifted again. She began leaving earlier in the mornings, long before sunrise, saying her team needed extra prep time before the office opened. At first, I admired her dedication, but soon, even her explanations started sounding rehearsed. Every detail was too clean, too careful, like a script she'd practiced in front of a mirror. One morning, I noticed she had packed more makeup than usual in her bag. Lipstick, perfume, a hair straightener. I teased her, saying, "Looks like you're moving into your office." She laughed too hard at that joke, her voice just a little too high. Then she kissed me quickly and walked out before I could say anything else. That laugh replayed in my mind for hours. It wasn't a laugh, it was a cover. I started paying attention to the little things. The way her scent changed, the softness in her voice that used to belong to me but now drifted somewhere else. When she got home, her energy felt different, almost relieved, like someone who just finished a secret rather than a job. I tried asking about her day, but her answers stayed vague. Busy, long meetings, deadlines. Always the same script. Then one evening she slipped up. She said she was covering for a coworker named Ryan who had called in sick. Later that night, her phone buzzed while she was in the shower. The name on the screen said Ryan. I picked it up instinctively, only to see a preview of the message. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow night." My stomach twisted. She'd never mentioned seeing him outside work. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to know more. The next day, I asked casually about Ryan. She said, "He's a good coworker. Helps me with reports." Her tone was calm, maybe too calm. She had no idea I already knew about the message. That's when I decided to stop being blind and start paying attention for real. The first real sign came 2 nights later. She left her work badge on the kitchen counter, something she never did before. I picked it up and froze. The company logo wasn't the same one I'd seen before. It was a different branch, across town. She'd lied not just about her hours, but about where she was working. I stared at the badge for a long time, my chest heavy, my mind spinning. When she came home that night, I pretended everything was fine. I made her dinner, smiled, even poured her a glass of wine. She laughed and thanked me, completely unaware that I had already crossed from trusting to tracking. I knew now that the woman sitting across from me wasn't the same one I fell in love with. She was playing a role, and I had just started learning my lines. Love had blinded me for too long. Now it was time to see clearly, even if what I saw destroyed me. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you like this? Comment below. It was a Friday night when everything inside me finally snapped. Amber said she'd be staying late again, helping her team close out a project. Her voice was calm, steady, perfectly believable, but my gut didn't buy it anymore. I watched her drive off, headlights fading into the dark, and something inside me whispered, "Go see for yourself." I grabbed my keys, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my chest. The drive to her office took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. My hands gripped the steering wheel, my thoughts racing between fear and fury. Every mile I drove felt like a slow unraveling of the life I'd built with her. When I reached the building, the parking lot was nearly empty. Only a few lights flickered inside the massive glass structure. I parked far enough away to stay hidden, but close enough to see her car. It was there, parked crookedly near the side entrance. She was inside, but the office lights on her floor were off. That made no sense. I sat there for a minute, trying to convince myself that maybe she was working late in a back room. Maybe she just wanted quiet. But the truth kept pressing harder. I stepped out of the car and started walking toward the building, keeping to the shadows. The cold air hit my face like reality itself. As I got closer, I saw movement through one of the ground floor windows. The break room light was on. 2 figures sat at the table. One of them was Amber. The other, him, Ryan. I froze. They weren't working. They weren't even talking about work. They were laughing, leaning close, hands brushing across the table. The way she looked at him, it was the same way she used to look at me. My chest tightened, my jaw clenched. I wanted to storm inside, to shout, to ask her why. But something stronger kept me still. I pulled out my phone and started recording through the glass. My hands shook, but I held steady. I caught every smile, every stolen glance, every moment she'd later swear never happened. Then she kissed him. Not a friendly kiss, not a quick mistake. It was long, familiar, filled with everything I thought belonged to me. That's when my world broke. Not loudly, not violently, just quietly shattered inside my chest. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding in my throat. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When she walked in later that night, her voice was sweet and soft. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "We had so much paperwork." I looked at her and smiled gently. "It's okay," I whispered. She smiled back, completely unaware that I'd already seen everything. That night, I didn't lose my temper. I lost my love. And from that moment on, I wasn't her fool anymore. I was her reckoning waiting to happen. The next day, I woke up with the same image burned into my mind. Amber laughing under those fluorescent lights, her hand tangled in his. It played on repeat, like a cruel film, and couldn't turn off. She stirred beside me, stretching as if nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how people could lie so easily while breathing the same air as the person they betrayed. She kissed my cheek before leaving for work again. "Don't wait up," she said softly, grabbing her bag. Her words felt hollow now, predictable. I watched her go, and as the door closed behind her, I whispered to myself, "Go ahead. Let's finish this story you started." That evening, I returned to the same parking lot. Her car was already there, parked at the exact same spot. I stayed back this time, hidden in the shadows, watching through the same window I'd stood by before. My stomach turned as I saw her again. Same seat, same man. The betrayal was no longer a question. It was a performance, and she was proud of her part. They laughed, ate dinner from takeout boxes, leaned close like old lovers. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, and she smiled the way she used to when I told her I loved her. I wanted to scream, to smash that window, to make her see what she had done to me. But I didn't move. Instead, I lifted my phone and started recording again. This time, I wanted everything. Every smile, every touch, every proof she could never talk her way out of. When she finally kissed him again, longer this time, I felt something shift inside me. The pain didn't sting anymore. It froze. I was done being hurt. I was collecting evidence. Every second I stood there wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about justice. When I finally drove home, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat in my car for a long time, the screen of my phone glowing faintly, proof of everything I'd refused to see for months. My heart was silent, my mind sharp. I knew what I had to do next. That night, when she came home, her smile was soft, practiced, familiar. "You still awake?" she asked, setting her purse down. I nodded. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." She walked over, kissed my forehead, and said, "You worry too much." I smiled faintly. "Maybe," I said, "but some things are worth worrying about." She didn't catch the meaning. She went to bed, still believing she had me fooled. I sat in the dark living room, scrolling through the video I'd taken, watching her lies unfold frame by frame. I didn't need to confront her yet. The time would come. For now, the silence was mine, and she had no idea it was the calm before her storm. After that night outside her office, I stopped wondering why she did it. I focused on how I'd make her answer for it. I didn't want shouting, violence, or begging. I wanted truth, loud, undeniable truth. So I started collecting everything. Every photo, receipt, and message I could find became a weapon in my quiet war. It began with her purse again. Old hotel receipts tucked beneath lipstick and empty gum wrappers. I went through her email next, recovering deleted messages she thought were gone forever. Each one was a small dagger. Casual words that had once belonged to me, now given to someone else. I saved them all. Every timestamp, every text. My hands trembled the first few times, but then they steadied. Pain slowly turned into purpose. Once I had everything, I built my plan. Her company's annual dinner was coming up, a night she bragged about for weeks, where her boss and coworkers would celebrate her hard work. I decided that would be her stage of truth. The same place she gained respect would become the place she lost it. It wasn't revenge. It was revelation. I spent hours arranging everything on my laptop. Slides filled with receipts, screenshots, and messages. I didn't add captions or drama. The truth didn't need decoration. The first slide simply said her name and company title. The next one began the unraveling. I practiced how I'd present it. Calm, measured, with no trace of bitterness. Fury would make me look unstable. Silence, however, would make her squirm. On the night of the event, I dressed carefully. A black suit, polished shoes, the same watch she bought me on our anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I entered the ballroom, laughter filled the air. Everyone congratulated her on another successful year. She looked stunning, glowing with confidence, surrounded by admiration she didn't deserve. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "You came," she said warmly, touching my arm. "Of course," I replied with a faint smile. "I wouldn't miss this for anything." After the speeches and applause, I stood up quietly, holding a small flash drive in my hand. "Before we wrap up," I said, "I'd like to show something in honor of Amber's dedication." The crowd clapped politely as I walked to the stage. The lights dimmed. My heart didn't race. I felt strangely calm, like a man watching the final scene of a movie he already knew the ending to. The projector flickered. A hotel receipt appeared on the big screen. Laughter faded. The next slide, an email, "Can't wait to see you tonight." Then a photo, her laughing with Ryan in a hotel lobby. Gas filled the room. I didn't need to explain anything. The evidence spoke perfectly well on its own. I looked at her once. Her face had drained of color, eyes wide with horror. I unplugged the drive, slipped it into my pocket, and walked out without a word. Outside, the night air felt sharp but clean. I didn't feel victory, just release. For the first time in months, I wasn't chasing answers. I had all of them. If you were in my place, would you forgive or walk away? Tell me in comments. The morning after the dinner, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages poured in. Some from coworkers who had witnessed the chaos, others from mutual friends who couldn't believe what they'd seen. But I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need their sympathy, and I didn't want their pity. The truth was already out there, and that was enough. By noon, the story had spread through her entire company. People whispered behind her back. Investors pulled their support, and her manager called an emergency meeting to address the matter. Amber, the woman everyone once admired, had become a rumor, a cautionary tale whispered over coffee breaks. Her perfect image shattered overnight, and I didn't lift a single finger beyond pressing play. Later that day, she came home. Her eyes were swollen, her voice trembling. She stood in the doorway, clutching her bag like it was the only thing keeping her together. "Why did you do that?" she asked quietly. Her tone caught between shame and anger. I looked at her for a long moment before replying, "Why did you?" She opened her mouth but couldn't speak. Her silence was the only answer I needed. She sat on the edge of the couch, crying softly. I didn't move. I just watched the woman who had spent months lying to me crumble under the weight of her own choices. "It was a mistake," she said finally. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Her words were hollow, rehearsed, the same emptiness she'd once used to cover her lies. "You didn't make a mistake," I said quietly. "You made a decision, over and over again." She looked down, wiping her tears. But they didn't move me anymore. There was a time when I would have given anything to hold her, to fix things, to find some reason to forgive. But that time was gone. All that remained between us was truth, cold, sharp, and final. That night, she packed a small suitcase. No shouting, no fighting, no apologies that mattered. Just quiet. When she walked toward the door, she paused and said, "You've ruined my life." I almost laughed. "No, Amber," I said. "You ruined mine first. I just stopped covering for you." Then she left. The moment the door closed, the apartment felt different, empty but clean. The air wasn't heavy anymore. For the first time in months, I could breathe without suspicion, or lies filling my lungs. The quiet wasn't painful. It was peace. The next few days, people kept asking if I regretted what I'd done. I told them no. You don't regret telling the truth. You regret believing the lie for so long. Amber disappeared from the city after that. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. Her absence wasn't a loss. It was closure. In the end, revenge didn't feel like fire. It felt like clarity. And sometimes clarity is the only justice you'll ever need. Weeks passed, and the silence that once felt unbearable became my peace. The apartment was empty, but it no longer echoed with lies. I started waking up early again, brewing coffee without waiting for anyone, and stepping out into the quiet mornings that felt like freedom. There was no more pretending, no more checking my phone for messages that never came. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting on anyone to love me right. Amber was gone. I didn't know where she went, and I didn't care to find out. The last thing I heard, she'd been fired from her company. Word spread fast, and people distanced themselves from her. It should have made me feel triumphant, but it didn't. Revenge had already served its purpose. What I wanted now wasn't her suffering. It was my healing. I went back to work at the warehouse, the same job that once made me feel small. But now it felt different. The noise, the sweat, the rhythm, it grounded me. My coworkers didn't ask questions. They just handed me tools and cracked jokes like nothing had happened. I needed that normalcy more than anything. There's a strange comfort in rebuilding quietly when no one expects anything from you. Some nights I'd drive out of town and sit near the lake we used to visit. The water was still, reflecting the moonlight like glass. I'd think about how easily love can become poison when it's built on lies. But I also thought about how strong a man can become when he survives the fall. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was just learning to live again, on my own terms this time. One afternoon, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It was from her. No return address, just my name written in that familiar handwriting. Inside was a short letter. She said she was sorry, that she'd lost everything, that she finally realized what she'd done. I read it once, folded it neatly, and dropped it into the trash. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about replying. It's about refusing to carry their guilt any longer. As months passed, the memories faded. I painted the walls, changed the furniture, and rebuilt the life she once hollowed out. Every day felt a little lighter, a little more like mine. I stopped replaying what she did and started focusing on what I could become. I learned that betrayal doesn't define you. It reveals you. It shows who you are when everything you trusted burns down. And standing there in the ashes, I discovered something I'd lost long before she cheated. Myself. That's the real revenge. Not making them hurt, but proving they no longer have power to. This is how my girlfriend betrayed me. Should I forgive or move on? Tell me in comments. If this story meant something to you, please like, share, and subscribe. Every story you support helps others heal too.